Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
Which industries demonstrate best practice resilience? Well, there's frontline workers, first responders, military personnel. So how best then to bring this kind of resilience training into the workplace? From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Paul Taylor is one of those people who seems almost superhuman, a James Bond or Jason Bourne type character. He's a former Airborne Anti-submarine Warfare Officer in the Royal Navy who's had intense military combat survival and resistance to interrogation training. A former boxer and Australian fitness industry presenter of the year, he's the founder of MindBodyBrain Performance Institute, and he's now completing a PhD in applied psychology. Who better then to talk to about resilience and how to get the most out of our own lives and our businesses? First, Chris Ashmore wants to know what motivates Paul to do what he does.
Mostly staying out of mischief, Chris. You've heard the expression, the devil makes work for idle hands. So I like to keep myself out of mischief. But no, on a more serious note, it's just about a continuing journey of self-improvement. And I think the quote that springs to mind that kind of drives me on is from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, who said, "Memento mori." Marcus, he said it to himself. He said, "Remember that you will die and that you can die at any point." So he said, do that not to be morose, but to remember that life's a precious gift, and you should use that knowledge, memento mori, to judge your behaviors and your actions that day. So it's basically, you get one shot, you got to pack in as much as possible. And it's an enjoyable journey. So,
indeed. Now, no doubt for you, resilience is important to achieve the things that you've done. Whether it's in the military or in business, how do you suggest we become more resilient?
Yeah, well, if you look at some of the research, there's really quite interesting stuff, right? There's lots of good positive psychology stuff about dealing with negative emotions, and that's really important. But in addition to this, there's really good evidence that you can inoculate yourself against stress. This whole idea of stress inoculation training is very much a theme in the military, and it's something I'm a big fan of and I'm looking into in my PhD. And there's actually good research from both animal studies and human studies that early exposure to stress along with a nurturing environment makes that animal or that child more resilient as an adult. So a lot of it is done in the formative years, which is why I'm so really passionate about kids. But there's evidence that we can train our stress response system at any time. So it's really, if you've got kids, it's about giving them that balance of a nurturing environment, but a challenging environment that gets them out of their comfort zone. And if you're an adult, it's really about consistently challenging yourself and then recovering effectively and having a bit of self-compassion. I think that's how that translates into when we're adults.
Can you give an example?
Sure. I mean, these can be challenges that just get you out of your comfort zone. Anything that gets you out of your comfort zone, whether it's physical or mental, actually creates adaptive responses. And I actually think we have the capacity to go way beyond resilience to the point where we become stress adapted, right? Where we're better because of exposure. So if you think, just for your listeners, think of your biggest achievement in your life. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it involves stress and being out of your comfort zone. So whether that's starting a new business, just getting out of your comfort zone socially or physically, all of those things prompt and trigger your body and brain to adapt to higher levels. But the recovery element is really critical as well.
Is having a cold shower, is that an example of getting out of your comfort zone?
It is one of my favourites. And, I do a lot of work in National Australia Bank and I'm known as the cold shower guy. in there because I've been talking about this stuff for 7 years. And actually, when you expose yourself to the stress of cold water, really interesting things happen at a cellular level. Over 300 protective genes are activated. We know that norepinephrine is released in your brain, and that's a feel-good stress chemical. So it enhances focus and mobilizes energy. And that's a really good example of a super simple technique that everybody can do. Just turn that lovely warm shower to cold for the last 30 seconds. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't get much easier. But it is actually a really good thing for your body and your brain.
Mazars is an international audit, tax and advisory firm committed to helping clients confidently build and grow their businesses. Experience a new perspective with Mazars. Visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
How does physical exercise help with the performance of the brain?
Exercise controls gene expression, right? So every time you exercise, there's what we call 3 waves of gene expression, and it's all initiated by these stress response genes. Exercise is good for you because it's a stressor, and your body releases these magical genes called heat shock proteins that protect your cells against damage, but then they trigger another wave of gene expression called metabolic priority genes. These are genes that just make your whole ecosystem of cells in your body and your brain function better. And then your mitochondria, they're like the batteries of your cells, they also improve, right? And then independent of that, exercise actually increases blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which is really, really important for a good function. It's like a car, you need fuel, right? And then the other thing is that exercise is really good for enhancing your mood. Actually, in the vast majority of cases, it's better than antidepressant drugs because it releases a whole host of positive mood chemicals. Endorphins, most people have heard of, but most people won't have heard of endocannabinoids that are released during exercise. They're feel-good chemicals. And then, really critically, serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline or norepinephrine are also released in your brain. And they're really important mood-enhancing chemicals. So, look, in summary, there's all these mood-enhancing chemicals and then massive widespread changes in gene expression that just make your brain function better.
What else can we do to help enhance the performance of the body and the brain?
Yeah, look, another really important thing, and I touched on it earlier, is really about recovery, and particularly for business owners. I mean, I'm a small business owner. I know that the stress that it can induce. It's really important that you recover effectively after a hard day and during the day, right? And by recovery, I'm not saying put your feet up, crack open a 6-pack of beers or a bottle of wine and watch Netflix. I'm talking about micro and macro recovery. I'm a big fan of. So micro recovery several times throughout the day. Get off your bum. Do 30 seconds of vigorous exercise, get blood flow and oxygen to your brain, and then sit down and breathe for a minute. But it's really critical how you do it. You want to do a 10-second breath cycle, right? So 6 in a minute, where you breathe in for 4 and you breathe out for 6. If you breathe like that for around a minute or more, it will actually change how your nervous system actually operates. It will reduce your blood pressure, reduce your heart rate, and take your brain out of a stress state. It's only taken us scientists 3,000 years to catch up with the knowledge of yogis, right? And so that you do that several times throughout the day. And then in terms of sleep hygiene is critical, right? Sleep is a weapon when it comes to cognitive performance. So look, just for the short thing, routine is key. Going to bed around the same time every night, and even more importantly, getting up at the same time every morning. And then particularly for busy people, running your own business, you're always in your head, have at least 30 minutes of decompression time where you either do breathing, do yoga, meditation, or just read a bloody novel. When you read a novel, it's a mindful experience, right? So the brain needs that time to decompress. The worst thing you can do is work, shut your laptop and then go straight to bed. Your brain's going to be on fire. So that recovery, I think, is really, really critical. And another one that's really important, it's a little one, but it's just gratitude. Just, having that regular gratitude rituals, and that actually just primes your brain for positivity. And the last big thing I would say is that social connectedness. You know, the brain is a social organ, and just not falling into the trap of being so busy that you can't connect socially, because that's really important, particularly when you're stressed. Just to go and have conversations with someone. Like, Chris, if me and you have a meaningful conversation, oxytocin and vasopressin are released in our brains. Now, oxytocin is the hormone of love and trust. Vasopressin is the hormone of social bonding, but they're both very potent anti-stress chemicals. So we've got to remember that importance of social support when we're struggling.
That was Paul Taylor, founder of MindBodyBrain Performance Institute. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.